All right. Today we are going to be discussing a bit about the project. Unlike on the previous sessions where we focused on programming some of the aspects of the engine, the idea for today is instead of doing that, uh, we are going to take a step back, and I would like to first share why I wanted or why I decided to work on this project. What is the project really about? Um, what references or what games we took as a reference when we decided to start working on this project. So basically, I would like to share some of the history of the project, and then discuss a little bit about the plans for the completion of the project. So we are talking about OpenArthurianX6, and if you don't know what the project is about, almost 1 year ago we ran a crowdfunding campaign in Indiegogo where we gathered some funds to develop this, and basically what we want to do is an engine, a modern engine that allows people to create games that are similar to Ultima 6. But one of the criteria that we have for the development of the engine is we don't want it to be retro or just for the sake of being retro. We want to make games that are accessible and easy to play while retaining the aesthetics or the appearance or the general feeling of Ultima 6 and other games that were made using the Ultima 6 engine. So basically, I would like to share some of the gameplay of Ultima 6. That's something that we're going to do. Um, just very briefly, so you know what kind of game we are seeking to create. It's a pretty old game from the 90s, and for most players nowadays, it's extremely dated. I mean, the user interface is very dated. But why did we pick this style of game? Why do we think it is worth making an engine for this kind of game, where we now have different options like RPG Maker and the different versions of it? The thing is that I believe that the features that the Ultima 6 engine had allowed the developer, or the developers in this case, Richard Garriott and the Origin Systems team, to create a world that was very believable. And I believe that it was the kind of the at the height or the pinnacle of what could be achieved. I think it's more like a balance between advanced graphics and, I mean, being able to portray a world in a pleasant way, but at the same time giving the player some freedom to use his imagination to fill the gaps and to project the world into something else. So that's why I think it's a good format to tell a story, and that's really what we want to do. We want to enable people to, or enable people that wants to make a game but doesn't have the skills to create a game or to tell a story using this kind of engine, which is of course nothing new. It comes from old times, from Adventure Creation Kit and the things that preceded it. Um, Talking about the Adventure Creation Kit, I am really proud that one of the supporters for the project is actually the developer of Adventure Creation Kit for DOS. So that's great. I had a lot of fun with that program back in the days. So I think we can go ahead and jump into some gameplay of Ultima 6, just so you guys know what this is about. Some of you may not have played the game. So we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and just run this version of uh, Ultima 6 that we have. This one I got from GOG in a bundle. I don't remember. I have it since a long time ago. So let's try to. How can we change the size? Can we go full screen? Okay, this should be enough. Um, so this is a game. I forgot the exact date. I think maybe 1993. Not sure about that. Let's check that. Ultima 6. Ultima 6. It's from 1990, right? For the PC, which is like the original version, and then it had some ports. This is the intro, which we can skip. If you know the Ultima series, basically you are the avatar. Ultima 6 is the last chapter of the age of enlightenment, and basically the plot here is that we are, after finishing Ultima 6, where we saved Lord British from the underground, we came back to the world where we live, and it's boring. And here in the background you can see, for example, this poster is actually the box art for the previous iteration of the series. Basically, you are summoned back. This is like in Earth, right? You are just a normal person in Earth, and you go back to Britannia. Uh, this is just cutscenes from an early 90s or game, right? Which I think in the engine we're going to support this. Maybe it's not really that important. I'm going to go into what we think is important in a bit. So cutscene, you go into the moon gate. So I would like here to tell something. So the story, basically, I don't won't spoil the story, but what I would like to say here is that using this engine, the developer of the game was able to tell a story in which the characters are very important, and I think that's what a facet that is very important inside the engine is how the characters are not just NPCs that tell you a single line, or NPCs that are part of a dialogue or of a scripted sequence. Instead, they are complex entities with which you can talk, and you can unveil the different information that they give you. Anyway, let's very quickly, let's see if I have a saved game. I'm not even sure if I do. So this is the main screen of the game, and I think, yeah, this is right at the beginning, and I haven't played in a long time, so if I do something wrong. But what you can see here is a viewport, very small viewport. I don't know, maybe 1 2 3, very small. I mean, you can only see your immediate surroundings. Then you have your party. You are the avatar. This is you, and this is your party. These are some enemies, some gargoyles, and these are some friendly NPCs. So I think you start in combat mode. You can move around, as you can see. As you move, um, everyone moves in turns. This is something very important for a different facet that I will discuss in a bit, which is the tactical combat. And you can decide what to do. So, for example, I can attack this gargoyle with whatever I have equipped, and then in very quick succession, all the others members of the world, both from my party and from the enemy, act as well. Some other things that we can see here, as you see, I killed one of them, is in this part we can see the time of the day, we can see the summary of the status of the party, some messages of what's going on, some different commands that allows us to interact with the world, and the current date and the direction that the wind is blowing. Let's finish this fight. I want to finish this fight in order to get into the dialogues. So let's kill all these gargoyles. As you can see, there's a melee attack and also range attack, and from here you can spot a difference with, say, for example, the classic Final Fantasy games, and it is that this battle is taking place in the same map, um, where all the action happens. There is no separate battle screen or a transition to a battle screen where the battle takes place. No, everything happens in the same screen. So after the battle ends, there won't be a transition to or a battle fanfare or something like that. Another thing that is important here is that the enemies have artificial intelligence. For example, as you can see, this gargoyle is fleeing, and as I say, we are on the main map. There is no sub map, and we're going to kill it because we are not very compassionate. We just did that, okay? So yeah, as you can see, I killed all of them, and I am still moving around. There was no transition. Uh, this is important because it gives a sense of the game being like a very how to say this, like this is not an abstract battle. The battle is taking place inside the game, so everything is melt together. The tactical combat is one of the things that we want to keep um, on OpenArthurianX6, so that's why I wanted to mention that. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat. None yet. Okay, good. All right, so let's continue with the gameplay. Um, and I want to show you, of course, the dialogues. So here you can see some NPCs. We can talk with them, and when we talk, we see a portrait of the NPC, a description, and then you can interact with him in a similar way that if you were chatting in a chat room or something like that, or in your social network. In this case, however, he did not want to talk with me. He told me that I need to talk with Lorbridge first. And I think this one is going to tell me the same. Well, in this case, as you can see, he goes on folding and interacting with the other party members. And the idea is that dialogues are like a tree of conversation where you can uncover different keywords, and you have to manually type them. Do you have this stone that opened the gate? Yes. From whence did it came? Asked Lord Bridge. This first conversation may not be very typical. The one with Lord Bridge, which is here, you see the noble ruler of Britannia. Then, sorry, we can do the normal conversation, which is based on keywords. Oh, sorry, I didn't know what. I think he's asking me some copy protection questions. Probably avatar. I must make sure. Yeah, these are the copy protection questions. Um, how were the headless produced? I forgot. Magic. No. How were they produced? I forgot. Alchemy. I don't have the compendium here. I actually do have a physical copy of it, which is actually the manual of the game. Where had images of the silver serpent been seen? Oh god, I don't know. Let's try for the last time. It's actually not needed for what I want to show. Where again? I don't remember this. All right. Let's see. I don't think there are any other NPCs we can talk to. But yeah, the main point here is the way that you interact is using typing some keywords, and then they go unveiling um, the uh, the plot and the world and the story of the world. So in OpenArthurian, we want to have that too. We want people to be able to create complex characters that you can interact with. And I forgot how to use the doors. Okay. And that's the third point. So tactical combat, conversations with complex characters, and then there's the world interaction. So you can do a lot of things in the world. You can, for example, pick up stuff that is lying there. You can I mean, you can do a lot of things. I almost forgot all of them, but uh, you can brew potions, I think. You can bake bread, etc. And this was a very uh, an innovation back then. Nowadays, of course, lots of games have crafting and stuff. But to make the comparison of an RPG Maker game versus what we want to do is we want to make enable people to create these highly interactive worlds if they want, right? I think depending on what you want to do with the engine, you may focus on the story or the world or the characters or basically the tactical combat, and you can make it as deep as you want. Um, I'm not sure if I'm forgetting something. Well, the other aspect is of course related to the first one, and it's the inventory. And I forgot how to access the inventory. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's see. Right. So this the idea is all your party members have an inventory where you can put stuff. But what I wanted to mention here is follow up on the criteria that I was mentioning about usability. So I was discussing this actually yesterday with Camilo, which is the other developer of the project, and we are not looking forward to have a one-by-one copy of the Ultima 6 engine. We want to take what makes it fun, but we want to create an engine that allows creating modern games and experiences that are easy to use. So after Ultima 6 came Ultima 7, of course, and in Ultima 7 the inventory was what it kept some of the concepts here, but uh, I am still in combat mode. Okay, let's go outside combat mode. No more combat here. Okay. So some concepts like the containers, right? So this is Dupre or whatever. This is his equipment and this is his inventory. And he has containers, and inside the containers he has stuff. And when you pick something with him, let's say we can also move using a single person. There are also containers in the map that you can examine. For example, this thing that we killed, this gargoyle, has a lot of stuff, and you can pick up the things that he left. And then it is a container. I can actually pick that gargoyle corpse, and then I can put stuff into it. But it was 1990, so uh, there were some technical limitations that were overcome later, like being able to drag and drop stuff into the containers. Uh, in here, it's a bit cumbersome, and I don't even remember how to do that. But you can, for example, move this thing inside the corpse. That worked, right? What we expect to do is for players being able to just drag and drop stuff. You cannot do that in this engine, but in ours you will, which is very similar to Ultima 7 and 8, right? and it's something that is just much easier for the players to use. We don't want to create a conversion UI just because of it. So yeah, but in the game you will be able to create containers holding stuff and drag and drop stuff between them. So yeah, basically I think that's what I wanted to discuss. Oh, there's an NPC here. Let's try talking with him. Oh, we cannot talk in solo mode. Solo mode is another feature that we're going to include, and it's being able to control a single character from the party. So yeah, this is the butcher, I think, a merchant. What's your name? Excuse me, Paul Napkin, what were you saying? You are the avatar, I've always wanted to meet you. So as you can see, this is not just a simple NPC that replies with a fixed line of text. He is more alive. And you can see, for example, here there are some keywords that we can start using to unveil all the story. Okay, you see, I may be forgetting something critical, but if I do, we will come back to the game. So we can just quit, exit to DOS, no, save game, yes, and then exit to DOS. All right, so that's the first part that I wanted to share. What is Ultima 6? Why did we decide to create a game or an engine that allows creating games similar to that? Now, where are we? As you have seen in the latest videos, not here, it's X6, X6, this one. I hope it's working. I think it's working. This is what we have now. So as you can see, there are some important differences in this part. It's similar. You see that you have a party, they are following you, you can talk. Oops, I attacked him instead of talking because it uses a different key binding. But here, let me zoom out a little bit. This. Hello, avatar. I was expecting you. Name. See, so you can see. Well, there is no portrait of the NPC yet, but there is a similar system of conversation. You can also, oops, pick up stuff. So for example, here we have some fish that we can pick. There's the inventory here. There is still no drag and drop. That hopefully Camilo will work on that. He's working on that. There's a skyline that is actually moving smoother than it works in Ultima 6. And there's of course some battle mode that this build currently doesn't have working, but I think if you want to see it, it's already on the other videos. That's working now. And so there's a lot of things to do still. So yeah, what I did about a week ago was checking what was the status and what was missing and what we could do to get the project done. And when the campaign was over, I did a plan for the development, which was based on capabilities and engine aspects. And what I did here was, in addition to that, I am also including a plot line. So keeping the motivation to work on the project is very difficult, especially when there's little time to work on it. So the way that I am addressing that is, or the way that I plan to address that is, instead of making just the engine, I'm going to make a game that uses the engine. And that game is an alternative version of Ultima 5. So basically the idea is that there's like yeah, a different plot, which is similar to Ultima 5, but has some very I mean I think they are small differences, but they are things that fit my vision much better of what an Ultima game should be like. So it's something that I have had in the back burner for a little bit, or I always had this idea of creating an alternative version of Ultima 5. Basically, with Ultima 4, which was a groundbreaking game, you had a fantasy world, but in order to win the game, you did not have to resort to something magical. I don't know how to explain this. Basically, in order to win the game, you had to be a good person. So it was were still in a fantasy land, but there were not like plot devices that relied on magic to tell the important aspects of the main plot line. So Ultima 5, on the other hand, had some kind of magical devices on the plot. And in this case, they were the Shadow Lords, which were like evil beings. And the thing is that I did not really like that a lot because I think it took something from the Ultima formula of being a more focused on the ethical and moral dilemmas and less on just fighting a bad guy. So basically, the idea with this is creating a game where there is no Shadow Lord, and the main idea of Ultima 5 about some kind of ultra. I think it's in my mind it's like an ultra conservative or regime. I want to make it so that it's not a result of an evil influence of an evil being, but rather someone that thinks that it's actually a good thing to implement this set of very strict and rigid laws to upkeep the order and the virtues. Um, so yeah, that's like the main part of the idea with the game. And there's an article in my blog where I describe part of that. The other thing that I want to do with this game is make it feel make this feeling of the resistance versus the regime be more strong, uh, because it I mean the theme or the feeling that you had when playing Ultima 5 was great, but I think it relied a lot on the Shadow Lords to provide this very creepy experience of not knowing what would happen if you entered a town where the Shadow Lords were. I want to focus instead of on the political issues of a group of people trying to fight this regime. So the idea is for it to be much more visible, and the final motivation to do this is I want to make a better version of Ultima 5 using an Ultima 6 like engine, because this was tried when they did the NES version of Ultima 5, which was a complete mess, very hard to play. But I would like to present this game as what Ultima 5 for the NES could have been, or at least some of the uh, structure of the world and the way of interaction, but as a good game, not as what the NES game was. So yeah, that's like some motivation to work on it. And now, what are the plans? So as I said, it's based on capabilities and engine aspects. And the capabilities are things the player can do, while the engine aspects are additional stuff that is needed in order for these things to be doable. So basically what we have so far is the player can move around the map, he can pick up items, he can talk with NPCs, he can check the inventories. There's some advancement on that, still not very complete. He can drop items on the map. Then we have combat almost fully working. You can enter and leave combat mode. You can attack an enemy within melee distance, attack a faraway enemy. I think we have some questions on Twitch. Let's see. Oh, not on Twitch. Discord. Oh, cool. So, interesting. Just as we are doing this streaming, Camilo is working on the inventory system, and you can see that there's some small advancement on drag and dropping, which is great. He's able to drag stuff around. And I forgot to mention that the idea with the inventory system is not doing the same as Ultima 7 or 8, but do a variation where we stick to the grid. So it's easier to navigate your inventory and things don't get lost. Because in Ultima 7, for example, you could the containers were like freeform, uh, if that's a way to explain them. You could drop the stuff there in any order, and sometimes it was hard to find your things. So interesting and funny that he just posted that while we were doing this streaming. All right. So yeah, we have that. We have combat working. We can enter and leave combat mode. We can attack enemies within melee distance. We can also attack faraway enemies with thrown items and with weapons that require ammunition. That part is working. We also have some progress on the day and night cycle, and we also have some progress on the mobs or NPCs. Mobs is like the more general word to describe all the entities in the world. They follow the player, there's some logic for the party, etc. So the idea is to follow this general plan that I'm going to open here that we did almost a year ago, but we're going to do that following also the plot line. So it's taking a bit to load. These are all the capabilities, not just, I mean, some of them are the ones that I just mentioned that we already completed, but there are a lot of other capabilities which are not yet completed that are here, as well as the engine aspects. But instead of just having a list of tasks to do, we are going to create this game with using the engine in a specific way, not just placeholder data and stuff. Instead, creating the game as we go through. So, for example, in this game, the game starts in a forest clearing at night in combat mode, similar to Ultima 6. As you could see, we start in the throne room fighting the gargoyles. So it will be similar here. And when we start the game, the day-night skyline indicator is visible, showing that it's night. The party is the Avatar and Shaminu, which is a character from Ultima. They take turns to attack the enemy. While in combat, the party members can move around. The Avatar is armed with a sword. So this list works as a set of acceptance criteria for what we want. And the idea is that by completing this, we're going to be able to complete the list of capabilities and also the list of technical aspects for the engine. The idea is to create bi-weekly builds, and the plan is to have a working version of all these in 20 work weeks. And what I did with this, I created a plan, detailed plan, where Camilo and I can distribute the work for this to achieve that goal. And basically what we have here is I am the yellow highlight, I mean the task in yellow highlight are mine, and the ones in blue highlight are Camilos, and that's the idea. So for a first milestone for the first 2 weeks, we would have a version of the game where this is covered, and this is mostly my work because the on the tasks that don't have a highlight are really working. The yellow ones are mine, so this is something that I gotta do. Then for the next 2 weeks we will work on the second milestone, where it's more work by Camilo on the inventory part, but he's already working on that, so that's great. And I think that's what I wanted to share. Uh, this video is very different than the previous ones. If you want to go ahead and check them out, um, they are in the channel. They are a bit more technical because basically what I do in this streaming for development is I take some item from the backlog, and then I start trying to make it work, scratching my head, trying to remember how everything works inside the engine and making it happen. But I wanted to do this video just to explain a bit about the backstory of the project and the plans. So if you are interested in the project, you can follow me on Twitter, check my blog. We are going to set up a website pretty soon for it. We still all we have now is the Indiegogo campaign page, but the idea is to set up a more complete website when we have something working. I mean, I don't think it makes sense to create a website for a plan or an incomplete project that may never be. I mean, this one will be, but I've seen a lot of sites where they are just ideas for the game. So we want to have something to show, something working when we have the website, something like a demo that people can check out. And yeah, so the plan with all this is having a working version for the backers initially, to be able to start creating and start testing and giving us feedback on the engine. So if you are interested, you can follow this or subscribe to the channel or follow me on Twitter, and you will be up to date with all the latest information. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.